Hello, everyone. Welcome to our weekly scope workshop. Hope everyone is doing fine. And today we have a very interesting workshop that we'll be sharing with you. Um, I'm joined by Yondan. Hi, Yondan. Nice to see you.
Hey,
So the idea for this workshop is we're going to cover a couple of things. We are also going to talk a little bit more about the hacker program, something really interesting that we are running. So maybe we start with that. So Daydream from December 22nd until January 9th, we are running our interactive AI video program. So it will run in two tracks, and we invite everyone to scan and apply here. There are two tracks that we are running. One of them is related to Stream Diffusion and Touch Designer, and the other one is related more to Scope. So I'll talk a little bit more about the one for Scope on this workshop, but you are welcome to join any of those tracks depending on your interest. So the idea is that we'll be having it running for 2 weeks. It is not just a hackathon, it's basically a creative interactive lab where you'll be joined by mentors. One of them is Yondan, actually here on this call. I'll give him a minute to introduce himself a little bit later. And also the same stuff is going to be true for the Stream Diffusion track. We encourage you to join so you can explore different things with Scope, start building some experiences with it, maybe expanding it, adding support for different models, or creating some amazing interactive experiences. What is really nice, and people have been asking us about this, is that it is completely remote, so you can do it on your own time. There will be daily office hours, so we will be supporting you pretty much throughout the entire period, every day on Discord. And there are going to be like two larger, more complex, or more comprehensive, I would say, workshops that will be covering some of the topics and ideas about the scope itself. So you will always be sure that you are being properly taken care of and mentored. So all you need to do is basically figure out what you would like to build and do together with us. And that's pretty much about Daydream Interactive AI video program. As I said, scan this QR code, you'll get way more information about that. And also, I would like to invite you to join our Discord. I know that you're streaming this on YouTube. We are streaming it on Discord as well and other platforms. This entire workshop, as I said, and this workshop itself, but also this entire program, are hosted on Discord mostly. That's where our community is, and we would love to have you there. During this entire workshop, you will have this barcode QR code available at the entire time. So at any point, feel free to join us there, ask your questions, and I'll try to answer them during this presentation. So, Björn, with you being here, I'll leave the stage to you. If you want to go ahead and give us a brief intro of yourself, just for the people to know who you are, what do you do at Discord? Oh, sorry, at Daydream. And, what's your relation to Scope? And then we can go. Then we can start.
awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me. You can hear me okay, by the way?
I think we can
Okay.
hear you.
Just double checking. So yeah, thanks for the intro. My name is Yondin, and I lead the R&D efforts here over at Daydream. And lately, we have been working on this tool called Scope that we released an alpha version of about 2 months ago, and it is a local first open source tool centered around making it easier, real-time interactive AI pipelines. And yeah, that's about it for me.
Mhm. I was thinking that maybe it would be a good opportunity if you have it running on your side. So maybe share your screen and just walk us through it, and also to explain to others what Scope could be used for. I'll try to get some questions from the but maybe just to explain how people can get up to speed with Scope, how they can run it. I know that they can run it locally, but they can also run it in cloud if they don't have the local GPU infra. Can you walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, so maybe what I can do is I am not at my typical desktop PC today.
Mhm.
However, I do have a presentation that I gave last night that basically walks through a particular and a set of particular use cases that I
Mhm.
have been experimenting with and we've been dabbling with. So I can definitely go through that, and it has a bunch of accompanying demos and walkthroughs. So I'll do that. But before getting into that,
Mhm.
kind of getting to the latter couple points that you mentioned. So Scope today is primarily a local first tool, meaning that it's something that you can clone from GitHub and set that up locally, and then everything runs on your local machine. And that means that if you have a higher end consumer GPU, so something like a RTX 490 or a RTX 5090, you'll be able to run some of these pipelines locally without depending on some external service. And the space is moving pretty quickly. So the pipelines today will certainly not be the pipelines that you'll want to use maybe tomorrow, a week from now, 2 weeks from now. But really the intent for Scope is to have it all in one place so that as it gets updated over time, you have access to an expanding catalog of models and pipelines. And as the state of the art and the frontier moves forward, Scope can expose you to that frontier from a single place as well. So by default, it's mainly a local first tool. However, in order to ease experimentation at this early stage, we know that a lot of people don't necessarily have high-end consumer GPUs. And also, if you want to get things running faster on, say, a workstation GPU or a data center GPU, we want to be able to let people try that today as well. So we also have that people can try out on the GitHub page. So this basically allows you to deploy Scope onto a run pod with whatever GPU that you want, and you'll still be able to use it that way. However, I would note that by default, it is mainly designed for local first usage for now. And I think better support for remote inference is certainly something that we want to do as well. But I'll pause there before getting into the actual walkthrough in case you have anything that you wanted to double click on there.
Basically, you mentioned at some point we support a couple of pipelines, right? So that's we have Stream Diffusion, we have Longlive, and we have Kria Real-Time, right? So those are the three ones that we are supporting right now, with plans to consider that going forward. One of the questions that we often hear is when to use each one. So all of them have different modalities. What gets inputted, what gets output, but also they behave a little bit differently. How would you describe them? Like what would be the the use cases for each of those?
Yeah. So also I'm not actually sure how this shows up. So can you also see what I have on my screen right now?
Yeah. You're sharing your GitHub, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good.
Okay.
We see it.
Okay. Just double checking, just so that I can have some visual accompaniment as well.
Yeah, and reward forcing, that's on the main one. I saw that earlier today. So I think that's what we added as well as a pipeline, right?
Yep. That's something that we added earlier this week. Not formally included in a release yet, but it will be before the end of the week. But putting that aside for a moment and getting to your actual question, I think the way to think about this right now is that I think there are maybe like two dimensions that are most useful to talk about. So one is the modalities and workflows that pipeline/model supports. And then there is the size and quality of the model as well. So on that first point, what I mean by modalities and workflows is whether you can use one of these models to do text to video, i.e. type in text prompts and just have video streamed out from the model. But other modalities include video to video. So sending in a stream of video and then having the model basically reinterpret the video frames and then stream out new video. And there are other modalities and workflows as well. Some people that come from the AI video space might be aware of image to video as well, where you give it a starting image and continue. So today, with the pipelines that we have available, the reason that I wanted to make sure that the GitHub page is shown is that, as you can see over here, under the autoregressive video diffusion model section, we have 4 pipelines supported right now. And we also indicate which of these modalities/workflows that are supported with each of them. So for Stream Diffusion v2, you can do text to video as well as video to video. For Longlive, similarly, text to video and video to video. And then at the moment for Kria and reward forcing, they're both text to video only, but video to video is in the works there as well. So in terms of thinking about this, If someone wants to, say, experiment with these pipelines and start thinking about what you can do with these pipelines, I would generally recommend starting with whether you want to do text to video or video to video. So text to video might be a little bit more interesting if you are mainly want to experiment with, streaming generation of video on the fly that one can influence using text prompts. So maybe this is relevant for creating almost like an interactive film or an interactive video. And then video to video might be a little bit more relevant if you have an existing set of videos or maybe even a set of captures from a game engine that is a starting point, but you want to restyle and edit and have an overlay on top of it. So video might be more useful for that.
Okay.
So I would generally recommend people thinking about, which of these modalities is most relevant to the particular area of interest that you have. And then a couple brief words on the second point, which is, the size and quality of the model. As I mentioned earlier, this space is moving pretty quickly. In the models that we have supported in scope, basically the first two and the fourth one here, Stream Diffusion V2, Long Live, and Reward Forcing, they're all smaller models. So they have a smaller parameter count relative to something like Kria, which has a much higher parameter count. And what this translates to in practice is the bigger the model is, generally the higher ceiling that you might be able to get in terms of quality, visual quality, because you can just fit more information within that model. However, the trade-off that it comes with is that typically it may not be able to fit in a smaller GPU or a consumer GPU. Even if it does fit, it might run slower. So that is the trade-off. And at the moment, you can run all four of these models and pipelines on a high-end consumer GPU like a 5090, but for something like Kria, it can run, but it is probably not going to get to high enough throughput for meaningful usage. But that's where, if you have a wider selection of GPUs in the cloud, you can experiment with that instead. So I would start with those 2 points, thinking about, the quality and size of the model, as well as the modalities and workflows that you want to experiment with.
Got it. Before you go to your presentation and show us, the different other modalities and things that we discussed, when you talk about the video to video in these cases here, right? In scope, does that mean that users could use even their webcam? So for example, they could use webcam as an input video. I know that we had that for Stream Diffusion. Do we have any plans for extending that to other models, or it's just for the uploaded videos? How does that work?
So it works with webcams. For anything that supports video to video, the pipeline doesn't care about where the video comes from. It can be any source. And then in the scope interface itself, if a pipeline supports video to video, then you'll be able to upload a video file, use the default video file, or use a camera device as well.
That's pretty cool. Okay, go ahead. You said that you wanted to show us a couple of demos and some of the works from the presentation that you did yesterday. Hit us.
Cool. So let me switch over to Keynote. Can you see everything? Can you see this Keynote?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this was a presentation that I gave last night at a local Comfy UI meetup in New York, and I won't go through all of it, but because I have the walkthrough already, I'll kind of use this as a base and then skip over the things that I feel like might be less relevant for this audience and focus a little bit more on the things that might be a little bit more interesting for folks here. So for context, the presentation overall was centered around visual prototyping with a combination of Comfy UI and Scope. But I'll talk a little bit about the Comfy UI stuff, but mainly focus on the Scope portions. So just to give people a sense, I mean, this is actually from Lars, a community member in Daydream. But when I was giving this presentation, I wanted to set the stage with, what does real-time video to video look like historically? And this is like an example with Stream Diffusion V1. And Lars, the community member, was using Unity and taking capture of the frames from Unity and then sending them through this model and trying to do restylization on the fly. So on the right, you have basically the output, and on the left, you have different inputs that you can provide that are all sourced from the same game engine. The thing with that is, I think, really great work, really awesome work. But of course, you can notice that there's this like flickering effect, and we have temporal consistency issues. So this is more of a kind of product of where the models were at than it is like this workflow not making sense, right? So I'll fast forward a little bit. We were talking about video to video, both at this presentation, but just now. And this is sort of the scope interface, right? And there was this question earlier about, will you be able to support video to video with other models and pipelines as well? Because originally it was just Stream Diffusion v2. And the answer is, yeah, we can. So this is actually the long life model, which was originally designed for text to video. But we made some updates so that you can do video to video with it as well. So you can see the driving video on the left, which is the starting point. And we can interactively prompt in order to transform the cat into other different subjects. And the nice thing with this latest generation of models that have basically kind of, you can think of them as the spiritual successors to Stream Diffusion v1, is that we get better temporal coherence, and we're starting to do better on that front. So as opposed to flickering of visuals, we can actually start to play with subjects that stay a little bit more consistent from frame to frame. I'm happy to keep going, but feel free to ask me to pause if you want to like throw in any questions.
No worries. You can go ahead, and if I'll get any questions from community or something that I've heard and would be relevant to it, I'll stop you. No worries. This is awesome. Go ahead.
So that's all stuff that people might be already familiar with. And I wanted to ground things around video to video because that brings us to a specific set of experiments that we've been doing recently. And I say experiments because, as you'll notice, the point of this is to kind of show with some improvements, I think we can do some really interesting stuff here, but we need some improvements. So this is really for illustrative purposes for now. So hopefully it gets people's mind going. And I think the experiments that I'll show will kind of demonstrate a combination of things that we've been working on. So I think last workshop, we talked about LoRa support, and that's cool. We can use LoRa's to bring specific new concepts to the model and have that be more consistent, as opposed to rely on trying to cajole the model to do something purely based on text and words. So a follow-up to LoRa's was, okay, we can take a pre-recorded video and upload that to the scope interface and then use a LoRa to, in real time, restyle the pre-recorded video into something else. But what if we want to do something a little bit more involved? What if we want to actually control the background and modify what's happening in the background in addition to the restylization of the character? And the good news is that there's other tools that can help us with this. So something that I'm going to show here is we've been working on the ability to basically use scope in conjunction with other creative tools, where the creative tool can basically generate or create and manipulate video frames in a more traditional manner. And then we can basically stream from that application to scope and then have scope take care of the generative AI portions. So the demo that I have here is in an application called Touch Designer that, if you're in the Daydream community, you might be familiar with. I know a lot of people are active users of Stream Diffusion and Touch Designer. But what I'm showing here is that I have a Touch Designer video output. Whoop. Hold on. Let me scroll back. So I have okay, let me see. Here we go. So over here, I have a Touch Designer output in this Siphon Spout Out node. And this is going to be the input. Now this input is going to be streamed over to scope in this window. And I have that arcane LoRa that I've shown previously. And we're going to basically stream from Touch Designer to scope, do this restylization, and then bring it back into Touch Designer so we can see everything in one place. So I'll pause here. So you can see that now we have the original video that we have on loop in Touch Designer, and we have the new version that we can basically visualize in real time if we want to try out different styles. This part is just showing how you can change some of the parameters. Sorry. Oh, this is annoying. Every time I click hide, okay. 1 second. There we go. So
we see your Touch Designer now, so I think it should be good.
Yeah. So what I was saying was that we can kind of change the parameters on the fly, so we can mess with the restylized output. And then what I'm showing here, hopefully you can notice, is I'm actually going to change the background of the video as well. So before I was using this blurred background, and let's say that I want to make it a little bit brighter. So now I can actually control things in many different ways. I can control the output by changing the parameters of the real-time model. But I can also, because I'm using this more traditional tool, basically selectively update the background or selectively update certain parts of the video, and then have that change the input that goes into the pipeline so that the pipeline can reinterpret that as well. So you'll notice here that the background of the output got brighter after I did that swap.
Got it. For example, just a quick question.
Yeah.
If someone was to use, for example, nodes in Touch Designer for upscaling, or pretty much anything that's available in Touch Designer, this would still work, right? Because this is being handled independently of them, right?
Yep, exactly. So you can think of it as Scope will generate the new frames for you. And if you're using Touch Designer, you could use any Touch Designer node or operator in order to manipulate the input video that you send to Scope. But you can also use any node or operator in Touch Designer to manipulate the output video that you get back from Scope as well. So everything chains together pretty nicely.
That is pretty neat.
So yeah, this was one of the demos that was put together recently, and this is enabled by something that we'll include in a release soon, which is support for doing this type of workflow on Windows by being able to share video between these many different applications. And that's using something called Spout for those that are familiar with it. Okay, if I move on.
Yeah, just a quick question about Spout. So instead of WebRTC, we are going to be supporting this option now, right? Is that the technical underpinning that enables this, or we did something else?
Yeah, that's right. So I think the way to think about it is that when you're using this Scope interface over here, there is video being streamed to this browser-based application via WebRTC, which is one protocol. But for this Touch Designer example, because Touch Designer is running locally, and because the Scope server that's bundled with the app is also running locally, instead of sending video data through WebRTC, we can actually use other options, because both of those apps are sitting on your computer, and actually be much faster in terms of transfer. So the way to think about it is that if you need video to be played in something in the browser, it's probably going to use WebRTC. But if you want to share real-time video across these local desktop applications, then there are a few options for this, but the one that we are going to support for now, is called Spout, and it just allows efficient data sharing in this way.
Got it. And in addition to Touch Designer, have you seen any other, or experimented with any other implementations of this, so that we are, for example, pulling it into another kind of software, something like that? I know that people have been asking questions around that.
Yeah. So basically, once this feature lands in, you should be able to basically do something like this with any app that supports Spout. and whether that be first party support, so it's like directly developed by the developers themselves or the company that runs the application, or if the app supports add-ons or plugins, if there is a community plugin for it. One of the reasons that we chose to do Spout initially is because it seems like there was pretty good support in many of these different creative tools. So Touch Designer is one of them. So the neat thing with this is that I was able to get this working with Touch Designer, and I actually didn't need to modify Touch Designer at all. It just works, which was pretty cool. But outside of Touch Designer, Unity has a pretty popular plugin that supports this type of workflow as well. I believe Unreal Engine does as well. And then the next demo I'm going to show is Blender, actually, and Blender has a plugin for this that I'll show as well.
Okay, before we move on to Blender, just one question that I got from the community. Lars, I'm not sure if the same Lars that you showed his work before asked is how often is the scope template in Runpod updated to the newest commit of the repo?
So we made an update to this recently, but basically, and this is mentioned in the README. I'm sure it could be better described, but the latest tag for the Docker image that the Runpod template uses is updated every time a release happens. The main tag for that Docker image is updated every time we merge new code to the main branch. And this is something that we added recently. So if someone is interested in using the Runpod template in order to use the latest changes that haven't been included as a part of a release yet, they would have to manually change the Runpod template when they deploy to use the main tag instead of the latest tag. And this is mentioned in the README with instructions for how to do that.
Okay, yeah, they can basically override it and use the latest thing that's available to them in that case.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, you can go ahead. There are a couple of other comments, people saying that they're really happy to see the scenarios this is opening, workflows between the scope and Touch Designer and other tools. So yeah, let's go on to, you said Blender?
Yep. So
okay, let's see that.
Yeah. So I guess I'll give a little bit of background, but so when we originally did that demo, that was cool. I feel like I gave a glimpse of some of the things that might be interesting to do next, and I think the natural next thing was, okay, well, we have a pre-recorded video, but kind of want to like interactively move that character around, especially if you are like an animator, or if you're interested in animation, or if you're interested in a more like interactive experience. I felt like you wanted to actually move the character around. So when I was putting this together, I don't have a background in 3D and animation. So I don't think I was going to be able to create a actual 3D asset and a 3D avatar on my own in like a day. So kind of had to look for some assistance elsewhere. And basically what I landed on was there's this model that was released, or set of models that was released earlier this year called Unirig. And the basic idea is that it helps you create the skeleton structure of an avatar that can be imported into a tool like Blender, or any tool that supports the specific file format. And then once you have that skeleton, then you can move that skeleton around within, in this case, Blender, but another application would work too. So basically, I ended up using Comfy UI, that someone created a custom node for this in order to help me do this. And I'll skip over some of the details here. I'll skip over, this is just me actually generating the skeleton, or the rig, so to speak, in Comfy UI. But I'll move on to the actual Blender part, because what I want to show here is, this is Blender now. And I'm going to use that same technique in the first part of this video. So on the lower right-hand side, unfortunately, I can't zoom, but hopefully you should be able to see that there is this share texture section of the control panel. And basically that section allows me to enable sharing the camera capture in Blender to some other app. And in this case, it's going to be
I see.
Scope. So I have that enabled now, and then we're going to kind of focus in the camera. And now this is basically the mesh, the character mesh and skeleton that was generated for me. And what I'm going to illustrate here is just that you can move it around. It's not perfect, but the point is you can move it around. So you can rotate it because it's a 3D object. You can, you can move the leg around. And the point is that you can move these joints around, and this is now going to be the input that I'm going to be using next. So let's move on to the next bit. So I now have this capture being shared from Blender to Scope in the same way as Touch Designer. And now I have kind of on the left, the character in Blender, or the character rig in Blender, and I have this other thing, this output, which is like restyled. This is running at a slightly kind of low FPS on my machine, but you can imagine if the model was faster, this would feel a lot better. So
this is long live, right? This is the long live model that you're using for this.
That's right. That's right. And this is running locally, all running locally on my RTX 5090. So I'll fast forward a little bit. So yeah, you can do very simple things like, you can move its arm around, and then we basically have this restylized character move the arm around too. The show, just bringing Laura's back into the picture, is that one was using the base model. There's no kind of additional concepts being introduced by Laura, and we'll just repeat this with that Arcane Jinx Laura that I showed last week. Or 2 weeks ago.
You're the fan of that one. You keep bringing it on many of these events, so I like it.
Yeah, it's like how the panda is now the mascot of Scope. Maybe Arcane is just the de facto Laura mascot. So, whoops, sorry. Let me go back here. Let's fast forward. Yeah, so hopefully you caught that. But basically, we have now we have the character rig in Blender, and then we can also prompt in Scope in order to change it to a male character. We can do some things around moving the legs around. I think we can rotate the character, and I'll change the pose for the character over here. And hopefully you get the idea. And just to be clear, this is definitely not perfect right now, because I'll show you some like. It's kind of more fun to look at the hallucinations. So like it's sort of like, okay, yeah, you see that kind of weird anatomical like breakage in the output. So the models, like these smaller models that we have right now that I want to use for demonstration purposes, yeah, they can't handle all of this on its own, right? So it sort of almost had that transition, but as it was moving back, you saw like her leg basically just broke, you know? So these are some of the quirks and kinks that need to be worked out on the technology side and on the model side, right? But I wanted to show this because I think the models will only get better, the pipelines will only get better, and I wanted to just, even now with what capabilities we have, try this type of workflow out to get a sense of like what are some of the things that we can already start trying, and then with the expectation that model capabilities will give us a boost on the visual quality side over time. So yeah, that's kind of the second of the demos that I want to show. So using a similar stack as the first Touch Designer one, the main difference here is that we're driving things with Blender as opposed to Touch Designer.
That's cool. So pretty much we are betting on the advancement of models and their capabilities to help us, with a bunch of these creative possibilities. One of the questions that we just got is, are we thinking NDI as well? I am not 100% sure what we mean by NDI here. Do you know in this concept within this context, what did it mean?
Yeah, I mean, so NDI, for folks that are not familiar, is I think I mentioned earlier that there's a few ways that you can share data across these apps, and Spout was one of them. NDI is another one. And they have their own different characteristics. I would say Spout is visual only, so it's primarily used to share like visual frames, and it's like the fastest option because it allows you to take advantage of some like nice like sharing of data on the GPU on your machine. But NDI is probably more flexible because you can use it to share video and audio data on the same machine, but to multiple machines on the same network, on a local network as well. We don't have support for that now. Would be interested in supporting it. I think if folks are interested in this, I would love to just hear like what specific things that they might want to do with NDI specifically that can help inform, how soon we get to it. So yeah, I would generally look for kind of like feedback and thoughts on, what you want to use NDI for. But it's totally possible, and it would probably work pretty similarly to how we're going to get Spout to work too.
Okay. So Oddwave369, again, you can join our Discord and you can share. There is this QR code in the top corner. You can join the community and tell us a little bit more what would you like to build with this, and that will help us prioritize things. Another question that I got from Lars is, overall, what is the average latency between video input to video output on the scope models, given a consumer-grade GPU? So probably talking about 4090 or 5090 in this case.
Latency
from your experience,
yeah, so on a 5090, so latency wise, I think at like a 480p resolution right now for long live, which is something that you could reasonably run on that 5090, probably somewhere in the 800 milliseconds to a second range. We haven't really optimized that much on this front. For Stream Diffusion V2, you can do lower, but I think it really depends on the configuration and parameters. So we haven't done too much work on like exploring all the possible parameterizations and configurations, and would like to do some more benchmarking there, but would also look to kind of like community members to help evaluate and find, like the right settings that would work for them, just because we're also focused on adding new models too that would outperform the current ones. So yeah, hopefully that should give you a sense, but always possible to do this benchmarking on your own too.
Got it. As a follow-up question is like, how easy or hard would it be to set up video input on local machine to scope running in RunPod in the cloud?
In the sense that you are like using the Spout stuff that I talked about?
I would say so, yeah.
Okay. So that's actually something that we are looking into right now. So I think it is it's definitely technically possible. We just haven't streamlined the process yet, but it is something we're looking to. So basically the idea of you can do this type of like local sharing workflow into Scope, and then Scope can take care of either running the pipeline locally for you if you have the GPU, but if you want to use RunPod or some other cloud-based service because you don't have a local GPU, then it could run the pipeline remotely for you as well. So we don't support that today, but it is something that we're looking into.
Okay, that's cool. A quick question. Now we are inviting people to join our, creative program, hacker program, however you want to call it. Are some of these things that you've shown today or discussed today, or maybe some ideas for improvements, are there in, something that we would encourage people to maybe try doing on their own, while being part of that program? So basically contributing to Scope in that way. Or you have some other ideas, maybe just to try to inspire them and maybe suggest some of the ideas to the people, because I know that from the audience that we have here, some of them have been asking like, what would be the good ideas? So are these good candidates for that, in your opinion?
I would say that it kind of depends on like what you're interested in. I see a few categories. I think if, I did mention at the beginning, like Scope very much began as a more research-centric tool, right? Where we wanted to first just like bring all these pipelines and models into one place so that you could evaluate them, you can try them. So that meant that like if you're a researcher or if you are someone interested in kind of building new pipelines, I think there's an opportunity to contribute there if that's what you're interested in. Like you're interested in like real-time interactive generation, and maybe you see a pipeline that you want to use or you think would be interesting to use. That's one way to contribute for sure. That's certainly on the more like nitty-gritty technical side of like getting into the Scope
Yeah.
code base, but that's also why it's open source, right? Like we want to work with people on this. So I'd say if you feel like you fit in that category, just drop in the Discord, start the conversation, and we can certainly just like find, what's the best way to bring your work that you want to see in Scope in as well. So that's, I would say, more geared towards research-oriented people that have a particular pipeline that they would like to add. We also designed it so that it should be pretty easy to add a new pipeline as well. And then you don't have to worry about how the video frames actually get to the UI or get to Spout, because we've kind of like built the infra around the pipeline so that you just need to add the pipeline. That is probably not the best fit for someone that is more interested in the creative application, right? Because it gets very into the weeds of these pipelines. And with that being said, I would say that the experience is rough right now. And a lot of what I showed you, just to be completely frank and honest, a lot of what I showed you requires a little bit of like cajoling, and also assumes that you have a local GPU. So I'd say if you have a local GPU like a 4090 or 5090, and you are interested in creative applications, then I would encourage you to try out some of the workflows that I mentioned here. If you don't want to deal with a lot of the technical overhead of dealing all that, or you don't have a local GPU, then I think the next best thing is we're working on a desktop app in order to streamline this process so it's easier to run. And then we're also working on exploring the cloud stuff that I mentioned, which will also make things earlier. So in the short term, if you feel like you don't want to go through that technical overhead, I think the thing that is still available to you is beginning to kind of like share your idea, like either use RunPod if you're comfortable doing it, or just simply it's like starting to share your ideas and like do the kind of wireframing, storyboarding for like what you would want to accomplish with these models and pipelines. And then as those things become ready, then hopefully we can get you using those things as well, that are a little bit more streamlined, a little bit more user-friendly.
Cool. Tell me a little bit more about the desktop app that we are planning to launch soon, relatively soon. What do you see as the biggest uplift? Once we have that, what scenarios does that open up for some people who might not be, as happy with the terminal or as confident building stuff from the scratch? What do you think the different kind of scenarios does that open for users?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big one is so it's going to be Windows first, and then other platforms later. And the main initial intent is no command line. So not assuming that you are someone that feels comfortable with the command line, and you would install it like any other desktop application, and then everything that is supported today would be supported there, but you just kind of have a streamlined one-click install process. As we add support for Spout, then it'll be easy to kind of get your real-time video from other applications into Scope, similar to like if anyone uses Touch Designer, Blender, Unreal, how they would do the same thing in those applications. So the goal is to have that experience be the same. So that's like, I see that as the first step. So it's really easy to install and streamlined, and it feels similar to other creative desktop applications. And then the second stage is giving people more options in terms of where. So obviously we're going to continue adding the latest capabilities of new models and pipelines, but outside of that, giving people more options for running these pipelines. So as I mentioned, this is local first today. And the reason we did that is because we wanted that to be the starting point and not have people have to deal with a lot of the cloud stuff immediately. But we know cloud can be very convenient, right? And can also offer
True.
higher throughput on a lot of these models and pipelines. So the second stage will be having good support for that experience within the app too, so that, as I mentioned earlier, someone that wants to experiment with, say, like sharing video from this other touch design, Unity or Blender to scope, and then running these pipelines so that they can experiment with the creative workflows that I mentioned. They could do that if they have a high-end consumer GPU, but they can also do that if they have if they want to use a cloud service that works with it as well. So that will be the second stage, and this is how we're thinking of sequencing it. So step one, streamline the install, don't have to worry about command line. Step two is some of the cloud stuff that I mentioned.
And we are closing in on time, but there is another interesting question. Is the long-term plan to integrate these video models into the Daydream API once it becomes more affordable and efficient? Do we have any plans around that you are aware of?
Yeah, I mean, I think generally speaking, this ties in with that last point, right, around cloud and I think the Daydream API will be a good candidate for kind of supporting all of these things. And it ultimately, I see it as a way to provide more convenient access, but also provide access to things that are, let's call it like not productive to run on a single consumer GPU today. Obviously, this landscape is changing very quickly, so there will be a lot of efficiency gains on models that can run locally. But I think the intent here is, regardless of whether you have a local GPU or not, like this experience should work for you, and it should work on local if you have it, and if you don't have local, you can kind of upgrade to something that's running remotely, and then have to work out the details of like how to support that in the best possible way that's economical. But that is how I see the kind of ideal experience here.
Okay. From the crowd yesterday, so you had this presentation in New York, right, at the Comfy meetup. What was the scenario or the use case that got them most excited, like the potential stuff that they will be able to build with Scope down the road? Was there something that stood out, something that inspires them and makes them think, oh wow, with the tool like this I could experiment and build it, and it hasn't been possible before?
I would say the most interesting line of conversation was around, I would say, like like interactive storyboarding and like pre-visualization, but B, those two things and how it connects with, say, a downstream process, or for those that are familiar, like basically post-production, right? If you are whether you're a filmmaker or whether you are in the video game industry. And what I mean by that is what we discussed was like potentially an interesting way to do earlier visualization of some of the concepts and ideas that you want to try. And I think the real-time interactive nature of things could be pretty interesting for that, and kind of change the way that you do that type of process. But then an important part there is that it's actually also linked with having the post-production process actually be productive. So then the question there is, okay, if you're doing some of this real-time visualization stuff, how do you make sure that you can actually keep track of and gather like the artifacts that you can then use downstream to fix up and actually make a really high quality thing, assuming that this first pass, this visualization pass, is not going to produce the highest quality thing. So I think there's some interesting conversation there, and there's interest in like what that looks like, in addition to having better like real-time visualization tools earlier in the process. And some of the things that we discussed there is, the possibility of what if you're doing this like real-time visualization with some of these models as a sort of like real-time visual assistant, but we're also making sure that everything is recorded and tracked, right? So it's like the vast majority of what you generate you don't actually want. It's basically serving as a purpose to then finally get to the thing that you do want. And maybe you only really care about 5 seconds of generation over the course of like 30 minutes. But then the ability to basically take that and then maybe like other data that you created during that process about like the structure of that clip, and then pass that to some like downstream post-production process so that that 5 second clip can be used as a reference in order to kind of go forward in the rest of that process. That's not going to be the ultimate thing that you show. You found the ingredient that you actually want to use in order to inform the rest of the process. So I think I would say there was interest in like, I mean, all this was like kind of spitballing, right? But I think I would say there was interest in like what that workflow looks like if you have some of these new tools.
Yeah, okay, that's super powerful, and I'm also seeing this. It is going to affect the process and the way how we approach creative thinking in those industries. Compared to what has been done before with the tools like Scope, with the generative models that we are currently having and experiencing. With this, I think that we don't have any additional questions. I'm just checking here. I think we pretty much covered it all. I would encourage you, everyone, again, to join basically go to our website and apply to our hacker program. As I said, 2 tracks with rewards. We would love to have you there. Yondon will be one of the mentors for the Scope track, and we will be exploring, as I said, different interactive video approaches. Some of the things that you've seen today, but also some of the things that maybe we haven't even thought about, but you might actually introduce them and show us how to do them. With that, Yondon, thank you again for joining this webinar. It was awesome having you with us and showing us all the different and new things that we had. I didn't even know about this stuff with the Blender, so that was really, really cool to see since it was hot off the press. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next week with different and interesting topics. Take care, everyone. See ya.